is Dan. What's up,
Hey
Dan?
everyone. Hey.
So
So
my
how's
my
it
first
going?
question is how do you tell which Frank? I'm like you said you're like Frank R or Frank M or
Well, that's even confusing in our
There's
own
usually,
band.
there's usually a context.
yeah.
I mean, I guess, yeah, we can use the instrument. So there's the drummer and there's the guitar player. That's how we figure it out.
Yeah.
But now that will be more confusing because I'm in Frank's background. So just just saying, guys.
So well, welcome to the interview. Let's put it that way. Uh, I took this interview basically after listening to the single Simon and Nico. That was the first one I heard,
Mm.
and it was intriguing. So I go, I want to know more. This is definitely not your typical, rock band. There's something deeper there. And of course, this was right before your new songs came out, so I started listening to the new songs, and but going back to that first one, I recognize I had some sort of Pink Floyd vibe going there. I noticed some influences going from the '60s to the '80s to the early '90s. Uh, that's a lot of eras. That's a lot of stuff, and I think all four of you, three used to be three, now you're four, but all four of you have very different musical tastes. So, which era do you think meant the most in terms of creative license, of creativity? The '60s, the '70s, the '80s, the '90s?
I can go first. So that's a really good question. I think songwriting wise, I think it's more rooted in the '60s. Like we like to tell stories and we like it to be a bit timeless. But you're so right. We all like very different stuff. So it's when we build a song that it's gonna come to life. Maybe the drum will be more influenced by maybe modern rock or stuff like that. And if I'm singing, I'm gonna be singing like a '60s star, and then it's that mix that kind of create maybe not weird sounds, but definitely unique compositions. So I think that's one part of the answers.
What so artistically, there's one thing, but also in terms of reach, is there a particular era that you found that had the most influence? Whether it's uh,
Yeah, I would say like generally like in the band, I would say the 90s. Um, they're like Oasis, was like Third Eye Blind. We're like, I don't know, we used to, yeah, we grew up like listening to those bands. So
mhm.
definitely it has something like overall on the band. And yeah, I think like Frank and Dan would agree, and even John. Yeah, that's a big influence right there.
Yeah, it's true. The '90s, especially even in Canada, can rock in the '90s was big. There's a lot of big bands that came out of the Canadian music scene, and it also goes to the age where we grow up. I'm a bit older than you guys, so that would have been perfect for you guys to be into the night. I was more into the '80s, and you guys are more into the '90s. There's probably a decade between us, if
Yeah.
not more. I won't reveal my age just yet. um, we we want to talk a little bit about the name Moonlight Club. Uh, you have mentioned before that the name it's a club in London. It's also a New Orleans bar, but it's also your occupation. You guys all
Yeah.
moonlight to make a living so you can play music. So when you're not working on the music, what is it that you do?
I'll just answer for the name. It's such kind of a cool story because it was 2013, I think, and we were looking for a name, and so we had like each of us we had like notes in our phone, and I had this note in my phone. I had just like the Moonlight Club, and I didn't remember like where it was from. And it's just after that, so we liked the name, but it's just after that that I remember I read that in a bio from the Stone Roses. So it's pretty epic 90s band. And they were saying they played at this club in London. So after that, we were like, oh, it's such a cool space and it kind of represents us well. But it was a bit of an afterthought. We liked the name first. So that's that. I work in marketing, and I'm a bit of an entrepreneur. I have a restaurant and a few other ventures like that, kind of all related to creative industries. So that's my little story there.
Myself, I'm in events and kind of cultural festivals and that kind of stuff, which at the moment is an industry that's not doing so great. So yeah, but bringing people together outside for either sports or for cultural kind of events is what I was doing before, experiential marketing, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and for myself, I'm working in graphic design stuff, and yeah, and it's I mean, I'm working in the tech world, so right now I'm super lucky to still have a job and stuff like that. Yeah. Other than that, yeah, I spend too much time on my computer though. But yeah, I mean, I like that.
One thing that's cool about all of our day jobs is that often we rely on either contacts or skills that we've kind of developed in those industries, and then they become really advantageous for the club when it comes to putting together shows or documenting our process and that kind of stuff. So we kind of each bring not only like musical skills to the group, but also some kind of other skills that kind of bring the whole package together.
That makes sense, because even in a business, they say when two people do the same exact thing, normally one of them become redundant. Like, you know, you can only have so many guitarists or so many drummers in a band. Eventually, there's going to be some redundancy. But if you can all bring something different to the table, not only your musical skills, but your backgrounds and what you can bring to the table. The marketing is so important as a band. Organizing events is so important as a band, to get people together, make them come, get off their butts and actually fill a seat or stand up in a club is important. And the graphics, and make it appealing, make something that will stand out on a record shelf or off of a Spotify list is something cool too. So cool that you can all bring that together and build it up. And I think it's kind of cool that your name comes from an epic club that was the birthplace of so many cool bands that stopped there. So and I can kind of tell that in your musical style, that you have a lot of visiting influences that kind of come in, make their mark, and then take off. And you kind of put your own twist on it. The three of you grew up, or is it, I don't know if it's all three of you, but you grew up in Trois-Rivières.
I did. I'm the Ontario boy.
Okay. So are you the newest member then, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we're missing the bass player, I believe, was the other one who's from Trois-Rivières.
Yeah.
So you guys all started out, you were three, you're friends, and now you're four. I'm just wondering if you want to move now to Quatre-Rivières.
Yeah, that'd be great. That'd be great.
But no, seriously, but obviously you have a very deep French background, the background Quebecois. What's the one thing about the French culture or the Quebecois culture that you're proud of?
Oh my God, don't get me started. Because there's like so many, and it's a recurrent theme in our band. I mean, I can speak for myself, but yeah, sometimes we're in that, you know, like that kind of vibe of sharing music, and oh, this is new, and you know, like, oh, for example, Lee Vobek just released a new album, and that's so cool. But we also like to discuss like what has been done here in Quebec. If we talk about Richard Séguin, or like even Francis Cabrel, which is a French guy. I mean, so many influences from those guys. When you start to really listen to music, I mean, we've been to, I'm talking about Francis Cabrel. We've been to his show when he came in Montreal, and it was seriously, it was just fantastic how his musician was like speaking to, you know, like each other in just a very instrumental ways. It was fascinating how they could control everything. And of course, like, yeah. So, I mean, there is a lot of, for myself, there's a lot of French Quebecois influence here, right here. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of punk bands also. Frank, the other Frank, always mentions. I think is it Carquois or another like Les Pistoleros. Like there's so many great Quebec bands that are, you know, sometimes we're not going to like be inspired directly, but it's kind of maybe that spirit or maybe a video clip they made in the 90s that we remember from watching the TV or something like that. It's really part of our héritage for sure.
Yeah, just for the records, Les Pistoleros n'existe pas. It's called Malajube.
No, but it was something. Anyways.
Really?
Yeah. For me, it would be like growing up, to go back to your question, like growing up in Trois-Rivières, it creates kind of an entrepreneurial spirit, because if you want something to happen in smaller towns, you have to make it happen yourself. You either have to travel or you have to kind of get your own thing going. And that's one thing we kind of got from there. And when we arrived in Montreal, we didn't know anyone. And we were like, we want to play music. We want to create and share music. We're going to do it. We don't need connections. And it started off very organically and maybe even sketchy at the beginning. But we got it going ourselves, and that's something that I think it's quite Quebecois and very much from smaller towns too.
Yeah, that kind of hard-headedness and in a good way, you know, determination and, you know, not really wanting to really change the goalposts necessarily. Like, you know, we want to get here and we will get there. And I think that is definitely a kind of a Quebecois kind of trait.
Yeah, I'm literally 50-50. My mom is 100% Quebecer, and my dad is from Ontario. So I grew up speaking French, and then I went half my schooling in French and half in English. But to be quite honest, I didn't really get the French music side of it, and I'm starting to discover it more recently, having a newfound appreciation for it. And I think one of the things goes to the culture. If you're choosing to do English music, to me as an entrepreneur, I said, well, you got a way bigger market. You'll make it much bigger if you do English music, and you'll get, you know, played more places. So it takes a lot of strength and bravery, I think, to limit yourself to one language like French, which isn't a big language, apart from Quebec and France and a couple other places. So it takes a lot of guts, because you're going to have a smaller crowd. It's going to be harder, but then again, there's less competition. So you can stand out if you do the hard work.
Yeah, I think at the beginning also, first of all, we grew up with Anglophone music, like Frank mentioned, like we grew up in the 90s listening to like the big UK bands and stuff like that. But also at the beginning, when you start writing and you're not necessarily like comfortable writing lyrics, it's just easier to kind of start with English stuff, and it's much easier to make English words fit to music than French words. And I think we were not comfortable even writing in French because it would be so personal. So we were able to kind of hide behind English at the beginning, and you can tell, like, for me, it's easy to write in English because I feel that I can write like pretty much anything. Sometimes it doesn't make sense, and then Dan will help me like figure some lines out. But it's kind of it's an easier way to create, I feel, because you don't get attached to the words directly.
So some people write in an autobiographical way, where they're kind of expressing stories about their life. And I find that other writers write more in a fictional way, maybe creating a character that they can live their stories or the songs through that channel. Which do you do? It seems that you're doing the second one, where you're kind of not doing so much about your own personal life, but you're kind of going a little bit more freedom.
Well, on this very day, I still don't know who Simon and Nico are. So maybe one day Frank will explain to us. Maybe.
I think Frank and John are quite good at putting themselves in a different persona or writing a song from the eyes of a character or whatever. But I think oftentimes it does end up not being autobiographical, but biographical in some way, because some songs are based on stories that someone told them or someone that they knew. So there is a kind of a personal story in it that is related to one of the four of us, but then again, like they are quite good at kind of jumping into a totally fictional narrative like Simon and Nico, and running with that as well.
But even a fictional narrative will have some sort of truth. There'll be some nugget of a personal experience that shapes that story. So I'm assuming that there is.
Oh yeah, yeah. I think the most, for like, that's a personal thing, but I love like Leonard Cohen, and I love all the band's work. And in these kinds of songs, you know, there's always like it's kind of very personal, and it's concrete, and it has like characters and real places and stuff like that. But it's usually it's just a big stretch from reality. So maybe it started with just like someone there sitting at the bar, but then the writer imagined a whole new story for this person sitting at the bar. And I think they are the most interesting songs because there's some reality to it, but it's stretch, or
It's
you
a little
don't know what's
bit
real.
larger than life.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't go to a movie to see somebody sit at a bar, drink 6 beers in a row, and go home and pass out or go to sleep. Like, that's boring. You want to have, you know, the guy that goes to the bar and all of a sudden, you know, does some sort of crazy adventure. You know, that's a movie.
And also, I mean, if you write song about yourself and your life, like there are so many songs you can write. I mean, otherwise you really have a lot to tell. And at one point, I think you have to make it about people, and you have to let people interpret the songs and just get their imagination going. And, oh, is this song about this or it's about that? And I think that's kind of the fine line between being precise and concrete and telling stories, but also letting people make their own interpretation.
So with the addition of Danielle, how did that help in the creative process of building the songs? I mean, you got 33% of voting shares in this company. Now you're down to 25. How is it helping? Is it getting that outsider's influence into your tight-knit group? Is it changing the dynamics?
I still have veto right, you know.
Okay, that's good.
No, I'm kidding. Dan, do you want to go?
That's an entrepreneur right there.
Oh yeah, that's a marketing call for sure.
I mean, yeah, like I can only speak from the outsiders coming in perspective, but I mean, when I first was connected with them and started listening to their stuff, I was immediately really impressed with how solid. At that point, you had one EP and a full-length album out, and I was immediately like a fan. You know, whether they wanted to talk to me or not, I was like, you know, this is already something that I would listen to. So they already had what I thought was a very well-defined sound, a confident sound. So my intention going in was to kind of just, you know, blend right in and repeat that. And that was sort of the case in the first year when we were doing mostly shows. And now with this new stuff, I think it has opened up the influence a little bit. Just when we're jamming, there is that fourth instrument in the room. So, and there is that those other melodic possibilities that play off of what Frank Miro is doing. And I guess probably in musically influence-wise, I mean, I come from a classical background, piano. So I look at a lot of the songs that Frank and John bring to us from a pretty theoretical angle, which I don't know exactly how that translates into playing, but that's kind of one of my strengths that at least I think that I can bring. And then in terms of what I listen to, I guess I would probably angle a little slightly more to the poppy end of the spectrum in terms of the indie rock stuff. So I think that's a little bit what you'll hear with my style of playing. little melodic hooks in there and that kind of stuff. Yeah, I mean, I think.
Yeah, I think it was the missing piece from what we already were. I remember Frank saying something super interesting one day. He said, it's all about the process, you know, and maybe like our latest album was like, I don't know, like a 50, well, let's say 75% like kind of achievement. And what we did right now with the addition of Dan is getting us closer to something more complete in our vision. So yeah, definitely Dan is the missing piece here, and I couldn't like for myself. It's like, yeah, it's a huge addition. That defined really like the Moonlight Club sound, like in general, for sure.
And it's one thing to go in a studio and to add layers, but to play live, you can't go back and re-record your track a couple times to make that same sound. So having the full sound where you can be portable with it and actually take it to shows makes a big difference too, I would think. And the fourth member would bring that fullness, that completeness to the.
Yeah, originally that was the idea, was to just fill in for a few shows, and that was step one, and then the ball just kind of kept rolling from there.
So you have a new EP, Mysterious Man, as the first single off that EP. And this is said to be sort of this love letter for Montreal summer, because we all know, I'm in Montreal as well, that when you live in Montreal, winter is almost like a quarantine. We're all self-quarantined all winter long. Stay at home, it's freezing cold. And then summer comes and everything comes alive. The city just becomes alive. Jazz festivals, Francophonie, there's, Pouza Fest, Osheaga, music galore everywhere. And of course, all kinds of other events and parks, and people just love it. The terrasse, having a 5 à 7 somewhere it's fun. Yes. And, it's an homage to that, but we don't have it right now. Or have it in very small doses. So how does that play out? Do you think we just have to hold on to those memories, or do you think it's gonna go back to normal?
Well, it's gonna come back. It's gonna come back, but definitely, like we wrote the 5 songs on the EP. We wrote them like last summer, and we recorded them. Well, we rehearsed them, arranged them in our little studio in the Milan, and we kind of had this vibe of getting together once or twice a week, bring some beer, go in the studio. So we wanted also the music to feel like not like a night out in Montreal, but more like capturing all the different vibes Montreal had. Sometimes it's a bit party-ish. Sometimes it's very light, but also sometimes it's kind of reflective. And that first song, Mysterious Man, is definitely more on the reflective side. But Montreal is kind of a nice place also to just have a walk in the street and a stroll, and you see all these people doing their thing. And it's a very inspiring place. So the follow-up songs will kind of capture other aspects of Montreal. Of course, right now it's a bit sad that we can't play and organize our thing this summer, but we're pretty confident for this fall.
I noticed in the video you had a globe.
Oh yeah. Globe. Wait for it.
All right, we got a prop.
Yeah, Frank has it. That's it.
So, I mean, I don't know if this is the meaning, but I could see Montreal as being like a global community. We have so many different flavors of different nationalities and cultures all coming to Montreal to add to the flavor and to the beauty of, like you said, walking in the streets, you see people of all kinds of destinations and places.
Yeah, that's the globe, by the way, just for the video. That's the one. Yeah, well, we had the thing with the globe that we kind of like also is that we always played in our past shows, we always played with like illuminating globes and kind of like a nod to the Moonlight Club, whatever. And we kind of had this globe at our disposal, and we were like, hey, that's our new globe. You know, we're not about lights anymore. We're a bit more about the world. So yeah, that's just a little wink to that.
So the Moonlight Club is going global. That's what you're saying.
Yes. We're
Right.
stopping there and a show in Alaska and
I'm going to go back to the songwriting because a lot of it has to do with how these songs are crafted. And I know that, Francois, you said that songwriting for you is almost like an obsession.
yeah.
It's this constant flow of these little micro ideas that you store on your phone. What are some of the topics you really like to deep dive into to kind of like, you know, you grab all these little thoughts, but what's the base? What's your recipe?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think you described it well at the beginning, saying it's more about maybe observing what's going on in the world and making it either a story or a little nugget of life, or maybe just a personal kind of lesson on it. So it's especially when I'm traveling or if I'm by myself in the city, and I think the easiest way, if you want to write a song, like you go by yourself in a coffee shop, you sit down and you listen to people talk, and you'll hear like a couple get into an argument. You'll hear like a newcomer ask for direction and stuff like that. And it's just all these stories that life is just like an addition of all these little stories. So I think that's what we try to capture in the songs. Definitely optimism and like just, you know, overcoming what life throws at you, stuff like that. There would be big themes in a song, but I always like to have like a note in my phone open. If I see like a street name or the name of a bar, or you meet someone, you know, like we could write a song about Randall, you know, it's
yeah, I would like that.
You like everything and everyone could be a song, and it's nice to capture it into words and music, and then it creates kind of a capsule of information, and it's good memories.
Like the title would be like Randall had to choose like a nice background for that meeting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting because I mean, even sometimes I think you sometimes walk by somebody and you get a piece of their conversation completely out of context. And I think that's a great exercise in creativity, is taking that one sentence that they said as they pass you, and then you create this whole story behind it. And it becomes like a creative flow of these characters. Where do they come from? And especially when it's out of context, it's even more beautiful, because then you really have more creative license to kind of fill in the gaps.
Of course.
What's the next single coming off? Did you guys pick it yet, or?
Ooh, good question.
I think is it still up for debate? I don't know.
Yeah, we're supposed to be talking about that like either today or tomorrow, but we have two really good candidates. They're a bit more upbeat songs. They're more like, I would say, classic indie rock. So
we could probably follow up with you on that pretty soon, I think.
All right, send me a text. Because you're not able to tour, you got, you know, this new baby, and you want to show it to everyone. What are you doing right now to still stay excited about the music, about live music? Do you guys do anything specific?
Well, I think I've actually just seen a lot of creative examples of Montreal, the city of Montreal, adapting the situation and still providing that live entertainment, whether it be like shows set up outside public spaces. Like, I mean, I was riding my bike in Rosemont the other day, and there was a full-on brass band performing for people in an outdoor space where normally you'd never see music. But I think the city itself is looking, is making it a priority to keep that essential part of what is Montreal alive, which is live entertainment. There's little venues that I think are trying to adapt in whatever way they can. So I think that there are little sparks of creativity popping up to keep that live stuff going. So just staying connected to what the city itself is doing and seeing where we can slide in to possibly take advantage of those new ways of reaching people or different ways of hearing our music.
Yeah, we'll be working also on another video clip for the follow-up songs. And we just started kind of rehearsing together again. Like Dan and I played 2 weeks ago, but even for like 2 months, we could not even play together. So we're kind of restarting the machine. And for sure, we'll, because we're going to be releasing the EP at the end of the summer, if we can put together like a real show, we'll do something online, either like a live session or something similar for sure.
I would think that there's a lot of restaurants and bars that are not allowed to open yet, but I'm sure that they'd let you record.
Yeah.
With, nobody in there. So, except maybe a few select family members or close friends.
Yeah, that's something we're looking into. To be honest, we're a bit, even right now, we're a bit overwhelmed with just launching the music because we're doing so many things ourselves. Like we don't have a team, so it's like Frank is working on some video stuff, Dan is working on some events or stuff like that. I'm working on getting the songs mastered and ready for distribution online. So we're just like, shit, it's a lot of work doing all of this. We have a little bit of help, but just doing that, it's kind of a big chunk of our time.
Do you find that because of the quarantining and the lockdown that is slowly coming undone or opening up, do you find that, normally a band would be on tour, extremely busy, but not having that constant stress and that the traveling, do you find it's a good time to be introspective about, who you are as a band, to think about where you want to go and what are your values and what do you want to bring to the music? Is that something that you guys are doing as you're having some beers at...
Yeah, well, for me personally, I definitely, in the 2-3 months that we weren't playing together, it was, and with not much work going on, it was definitely an opportunity for myself just to advance like technically and throw down more ideas, and it's valuable time that we never would have had. So personally, just as a musician myself, I feel like that was a positive outcome of this quarantine, was that I could put in a lot more energy into these hobbies. I think it also took quite a bit of pressure off like the whole release. Like normally, once the machine is started, you only have a certain amount of time frame that you can get everything out, and you can't stretch something out normally as long as maybe what we're doing now in normal times. There's so much new stuff that people will move on to the next thing. So I think we're able to enjoy the release a little bit more actually, because we have a little bit of pressure of time off of our hands.
And it's really fun. And if you see like the Montreal scene right here, like there's many artists that are releasing stuff right now, and it's kind of cool, even though like there's no shows planned or like some events. I think it's just another way of like sharing every kind of the music we're creating. So yeah, I would say like we really enjoy. I agree with Dan on this one. Like we really enjoy sharing our stuff right now.
Well, we look forward to what's to come, this creative burst that's going to come from these months being isolated, and I can't wait to see you guys live. I think it'd be very interesting the way that your musical influences are so diverse. It really makes for an experience that'll be like none other, I would think, because of that. So you guys really have an original sound, and I'm looking forward to the next release.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Randall.
We'll send you the follow-up song to Mysterious Man for sure.
Yeah, if I'm going to ask one last question, and then I want to ask where we can get your stuff. So I call this a champagne question. So we're opening up a bottle of champagne 1 year from now, because we're celebrating something that you've just accomplished. What will that be?
That I know. No, I'm joking, but you know, when we're quite, like, as Dan said, we don't have a lot of time, and we're not full-time musicians, but we're pretty choiceful about what we try to do and stuff like that. And when we wrote the little plan for this EP, we were arguing about what would be like the nicest outcome for this EP. Like, is it to have like 1 million views on YouTube, or is it to do like 10 shows? And that's my thing personally, and you guys go after. But for me, it would be really nice for this EP to be, I will say it, maybe like a short list in one of the Canadian awards, whether it's a Polaris Prize or something like that. I think it's because for us, coming from outside the music industry with like no knowledge, no connection, just knowing that people from the music industry heard our stuff and acknowledge it, any kind of industry like recognition would be like a champagne worthy event.
It's like being accepted into the family.
Yes, and also because we did it our own way, and not using like the
formula.
Yeah, exactly. So that would be like the champagne
3 chords
work.
that make up 80% of every song.
Yeah, we might have one song with these chords, but that's my thing. You guys go.
Well, that's a good question, actually. Like, I'm still thinking of it all, but it's cool because we often speak about that, and like one thing that we speak a lot about is like, what is the Moonlight Club? Of course, right now, like, it's a band. It's we play music. We're like 3, right now 4 guys, but we used to do snowboard and ski while we were like younger, me and Frank and John, and we formed as a band playing music with all that stuff. But what is it, the Moonlight Club for the future? Is it like, I don't know, like a production studio? Is it like, I think we give, like we don't have like in finalité, like something super concrete in mind. But right now, since Dan joined, and we're like, for me, like, our sound right now is really what we are, so we can surf on it like for a while, and I wish it will. But maybe the Moonlight Club could expand to, like something more than just a band, or we're trying to like, we like to dream about this stuff too.
Yeah, like, this was our first lap around the track as 4, so the first one's a lot of fun, but maybe the second time around you've done it once, so you want to do things differently, or you want to push a little further. So yeah, I know what Frank is getting at there. For me, I think when Mysterious Man came out on Friday, that's when I popped the champagne already. Like, to me, joining the band and getting music that I was part of onto these major platforms, and getting it in this big, it was suddenly just available to everyone, and I was able to share that. To me, that was like, at this point now, every kind of milestone is another bottle of champagne for me. Like, I'm definitely riding a wave. They have been around the block once with this process already, or twice even. So as the rookie, it was already really, really exciting. And then I guess the other one maybe would be Montreal is like the city of festivals. So if we could get into, if we were playing at Mile X or Folk Fest, something like that, to me that's like so definitively Montreal. So to be part of something like that would be a dream come true for me. I
think your recording studio is right close to where they have Mile X. I could
pretty much, yeah.
Bridge, right?
Yeah, we see it from there.
Yeah, that's actually a cool festival. I saw a lot of bands that I turned out to be that I really enjoyed afterwards by discovering them on the small stage, and it's like, wow, got a lot of talent in this area, Canada.
Yeah.
If people want to get to know you more, there's the website, which I'll put a link to. If people want to get the music, what's the best way? Do you guys have vinyl? Do you guys is this just streaming?
Yeah, so the new stuff. Well, all of our song is available everywhere, like Apple, SoundCloud, YouTube, Spotify, name it. And the new stuff will be all released free digitally online. No vinyl for this EP, because it's such a. Are you a vinyl fan?
Oh, big one, yeah.
We'll send you a couple of copies of the last album for sure. So we still have vinyl version. We might run a short run of CDs just because we like to keep CDs alive. But otherwise, it's online, free everywhere.
Yeah, tapes are even coming back. Who knew?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, well, we look forward to your release. We look forward to the next time we can actually see you live. And thank you so much for being on Montreal Rocks.
Thank you so much.